Okay, I'm back for another video. What I'm going to be talking about in this one is probably one of the two most impactful things that I've done with TechnoTutor to date. And this happened about 6 years ago, roughly. Now, keep in mind that, following from the last video about how my work situation improved dramatically, I had bought the area, and it was decided between myself and the distributor who I was working with, which back then there was only one distributor near me, who pretty much everyone knows who I'm talking about. But and at the time, because of the stability issues I had back then, just focus being all over the place, scattered intentions, just completely polarity and emotionally driven, it was decided between us that I needed to do a slightly different approach, at least temporarily, to become a lot more grounded because of my responsibility as an area distributor. And I've told, the reason I wanted to put this on video is because I told Mitch this story at the Cabo event, and he was very blown away by the results. So I figure all the distributors should know about this, so that you can either tell people about it, or if someone can be trusted enough to see it, then they can see it first, this video. But basically what I did was I blitzed the curriculum, which I don't recommend doing that, just for certain reasons, and it was specifically part of my own process to do it that way. Because at the time I was dealing with basically near painful, gut-wrenching anxiety, where it almost felt like someone was taking wrenches to my my gut, or my solar plexus and intestines, whatever you want to call that area, and just twisting them around. Let's just say it was just shy of being painful. Like, if it had been any more painful, I probably would have been in the hospital regularly and been on painkillers. But it was just off the pain chart, just barely off the pain chart, to the point that it was manageable. But it affected my life up to that point dramatically. And as a result, I lived a very stressful life and very fear-based life. In fact, basically who I was up until that point was I was run by fear, anxiety, and stress. And so as I went through the curriculum without definitions, and just one thing I want to say, in case there's anyone who's not a distributor watching this, if you're experiencing any form of anxiety or stress levels that high, consult a doctor, because I'm not a doctor, I have no medical training, and I don't want to guarantee or promise that this is going to happen to you. This is what happened to me, specifically for this, and I really hope that, and if you're going to do this, there's a specific way to do it now that doesn't, where you can avoid the mistakes I made. But really, there's a specific way of doing it to address these things now. But again, consult a medical professional as well, if you don't own TechnoTutor already. Even if you do own TechnoTutor, do it specifically how the distributor you're dealing with says to do it. Please. But anyways, it was about spring of that year that I started doing this, and some as soon as I started doing this, some very interesting things started happening in my world. Um, I began opening up a lot more, and almost felt like I was being freed from something that I couldn't quite explain. But I guess my inner, yeah, I won't really get into much detail, but um, at the time it felt very liberating. And as I was doing that, I, I mean, I had to face some internal blockages physically manifesting in my reality in this time, but that was my own personal stuff because I had been extremely blocked. Um, and and if you do things properly, you won't deal with that. But the bottom line is that by the end of that year, it was about 8 months later, and I didn't even realize this until about a month after it actually had happened, that um, basically my by the end of that year, after 8 months of starting this, my anxiety basically disappeared. Like if it was at 99 or 100%, it went down to maybe 2 or 3%. My stress, and then basically by the end of a full year of doing this, my stress and the general feeling of fear within myself had pretty much completely vanished. And it was basically nothing short of a miracle for me. And I'm not going to promise that this will happen for anyone. And like I said, I don't want anyone to do that. But again, us as distributors, we know how to do this now in a much more effective way that takes probably the same amount of time, give or take. But I mean, this was part of my personal process, and as I did this, the my reality literally reshaped itself around me in order to support me going through that because just because of some other things that happened, I was lucky in that way. And one thing I've noticed is that within supporting TechnoTutor, the the universe and your reality tends to support you in some funny ways. So there's nothing, as long as you're using TechnoTutor effectively, um, you really don't have anything to fear because we all know, we as a group, we know what we're doing now. But basically, by the end of that 1 year period, the anxiety, the stress, and the fear was no longer running me. And it took me some time after that to learn to adapt to living differently, which it took a little bit to for me to adjust, but I've gotten, the adjustment was okay. But it was a good adjustment because, like I said, my reality supported me to do the adjustment properly, in which basically means that yeah, I won't get into the details, but safe to say that my friends and family were very helpful for me with me in that time, and I'm forever grateful to everyone who was there in that time. But yeah, since that time, anxiety, stress, and for a good deal of fear has more or less completely vanished. And again, I'm not going to say any names, but I'm not the only one that I've heard of this similar things happening with other people I know who have been consistent with it. So I hope this story helps.